Hi Jim, how you doing? We are already getting on our YouTube live. We'll be starting at 4 o'clock. And for those of you watching on YouTube who are Finerworks customers, log in to your dashboard right here. And if you want to, you can join the Zoom call that is just below right there. You'll have your passcode and stuff like that at the bottom. So just log in there and get that. And what I may do is just set up in a little quieter of an area while we're waiting. Again, welcome. We'll be starting at 4 o'clock Central. If you're watching on YouTube, just log into your Finerworks account and get in there, and you can go ahead and click on the Zoom link if you'd like to participate in the Zoom call. So if you're watching on YouTube, just go ahead and come on over there. And I'm just going to mute myself while I move up. Hi, Jim. We'll be getting ready shortly. I just have us up. We're already set up on YouTube, and we're going straight. I'm just setting up here, so I can float in and out of the picture now. Oh, I think you're still on mute.
I said, I'm hoping you're feeling better.
I'm trying to. A little
Yeah.
electrocution goes a long way, so.
Mm.
But yeah, we've been doing a little bit better here. But I'm gonna just kind of soundproof a little bit better here, and I'll be right back.
Okay. Oh, can you give me permission to record?
Yes, and let me get that on here. Let me see. Oh, let me let James in. Hold on 1 second. I think that'll come in right when I make you host.
Oh, okay.
So I gotta set it up on my side here too. Hold on. Start the recording. Let's see.
It's incredible, Jim Landers.
We'll see.
Wow.
You get to determine that after,
Yeah.
or sometime during.
Well, I wasn't feeling so incredible today. I keep getting my times all mixed up, and
Really?
yeah, I got to get someone to manage this newsletter. I'm always rushing through it.
Yeah.
And never.
I totally understand that kind of thing.
It's like every other newsletter I'm sending out the correction afterwards. And then Melissa's too busy with all the other stuff, and
yeah.
So,
well, you know what? If you just write and give me some of the promotion updates, then I could probably go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I also need to find someone to handle the graphic design part, like creating the web graphics and so forth, so like product mock-ups.
Well, maybe we just come up kind of more of a template and have it there.
Yeah, but I mean, just like, for instance, like just I want like a certain style, and so I need to find someone that can capture that style.
Well, we'll work on that and then try to get it. As long as it's template, if we can come up template, that's easier. I mean, Geo Galleries is just kind of running on its newsletter, being that, and we actually have our first going out to customers this week, and now I kind of have enough material to kind of assist customers with it. Kind of telling them about paper products that they're buying. And then we have now about 5 video interviews with artists and photographers on there. So those are building.
By the way, on the Photo Tips Monthly on the YouTube playlist, it only has one.
Yeah, because we've only had one Photo Tips Monthly. This is the second.
Oh, yes, sir.
I saw 2.
Yeah, this is the second one.
What
the
about
first one we had was a Finer Works one.
Yeah, it was kind of an introduction. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Can we put it on both?
I can add it to both.
Okay. Yeah, that way it looks a little bit more.
Yeah, we're new and we're building, so.
Yeah. So Jim, what's been going on with you this past week? How you been doing?
Pretty much same old. It seems like there's been an unusual number of people that I know that have passed away in the last couple of weeks. I know 4 people that have passed away in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, and all of them are related to photographers. None of them are photographers, but each one of them is related to photographers. Yeah, so it's just an unusual period of time.
Oh, yeah.
It is. I know my Facebook's starting to become a memorial page, so that's getting kind of weird.
Yeah, that is. Oh, one of someone who I assume still uses you. He just moved from about a year or 2 ago from here to Missouri, but he uses Finer Works, or at least he did. But that you may have seen on the news yesterday, day before yesterday, I think maybe it was yesterday. Either way, a 9-year-old girl who went to school on
Yes.
Friday and got sick and passed away. That is one of your customers' granddaughters.
Oh,
His
really?
name's Bruce Miller.
Mm,
I
Condolences.
assume he's
Yeah.
on your client list.
that's,
Yeah.
no, that's
It's affecting everybody. So
Mhm.
if not, directly, everybody at this point knows somebody.
I mean, a 9-year-old gets it, and 3 days later, it's it.
Yeah, it's kind of a Russian roulette thing. You don't know how a body's going to react. Some people, nothing. I've had several friends who've had no symptoms, no nothing, other than they tested it several times. And then I have some friends that have just crashed immensely and were completely healthy. So you never know. It's gonna.
yeah. Brian's
Weird.
wife right now has it, and he keeps testing not negative.
Yeah.
Brian Wells, his new wife or wife to be has COVID-19, but Brian's COVID free.
That's
Good for him, but dang.
Yeah, so it's very. I'm pretty confident I had it a month or so ago, but yeah, for me it just I barely noticed. I mean, it felt more like just a cold to me.
Mhm.
Well, we got about 8 minutes to start. We're set up and going up on our YouTube there. So I'm gonna give control over at 4 o'clock over to Jim after I let everybody in. We have a few people who are in the waiting room. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can go ahead and have any questions, just put them in the comments and we will convey those to Jim. And if you're watching on Zoom, you're going to go down to your center a control bar here and hit the chat button. And you can go ahead and send us a message there as well. And we'll get this going in a few minutes. I think I'll let everybody in about 3 more minutes, start to let people in from the waiting room.
Okay.
And we'll have James give an intro, I guess, to Jim, in case we have new people watching.
Well, at the rate I've been going, I'll probably mess that up too. So
We
I'm gonna
will
let you do
Okay,
that.
we may let Jim.
We don't.
We've known Jim
we
a
don't need
long time. I think I was developing film for Jim when I was 20 years old. So that's about 25 years ago. And I think 1 hour
pretty
per
wild.
photo. We used to do life touch photos there. So I remember.
Dang.
I know it doesn't. I can't get over it. It's been that long.
Yeah, no
Um,
kidding.
But
We're
yeah,
not old enough,
I know.
especially
I know
you.
I'm definitely right. It's been a while on here. I've been doing this for a while. So one way or another, I've been doing some kind of photo printing. It's like, it's like the mob. It just keeps pulling me back in, every time I think I'm out. But I like it. So let me go ahead and see. We got a few participants in there. We got one guy. Go ahead and I'll start admitting him. That off.
Melissa, I put the handout in the chat, but I know that anyone who comes in after I've placed it won't be able to see it.
Yeah.
Should I just
Yeah, every now and then, just maybe.
should I just put it in there again every once in a while?
Let me get into the chat.
Oh, they can. Yeah, I think it'll stay there where they can just click on download it and just remind them.
They have to scroll all the way back up it. I'll download it here, and then what I'll do, Jim, is I'll just occasionally upload it again. So background, okay, great. Let me put that on my desktop. Find it. All right. Okay, I'm gonna admit Martin in here. And let me go ahead, Jim. I'm gonna make sure this is all off, and I'm recording too on my side. And get this over to you as a host. That way you can share your screen. And you can start hitting the record if you'd like to as well.
Cool. Thank you. I see Julie and Martin. Hi, Julie. Hi, Martin.
There you go.
And
How's it going?
if you can you go ahead and
Good morning.
on your view, go ahead and put it as either speaker view and maybe pin yourself right there. So that way we'll during the recording on YouTube, they see your screen.
So
See
speaker
me.
view and like that.
Mhm.
Okay. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm in New Zealand.
New
Wow.
Zealand, really?
Yeah.
Wow. What time is it in New Zealand?
It is about 2 minutes to 11 on Friday.
On Friday.
Yeah.
One of my, I have one client that's in Australia, and it's fun visiting because when we're talking, it's in the evening here and in the morning there, and so I often make a mistake by saying good evening or good morning, and it's the wrong thing. So that's kind of fun.
Well, it's really nice that you guys have chosen this kind of time frame so the Pacific can be part of it.
No, I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good point. Yeah, because otherwise, well, if we do it, yeah, okay. All right.
Because a lot of people do it, and it puts us at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning.
Correct. If it's like a
Yeah.
9
Stuff to get up.
a.m., you got a 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. I remember being in Japan and trying to put up stuff for Finer Works while I was in Japan, and being up at the alarm clock, letting me ring all the time, but it was fine. The 9 a.m. was a little hard, but I was going to sleep about 3. I'd just wake up in an hour and post.
There you go. You found a solution.
Yeah, it's great to be an insomniac. I can work all over the world.
Wow.
Tim, I want to thank you again for doing this for us. These are becoming our monthly show here on our YouTube and on our Final Works thing. And we invite everybody to join in on Zoom, and they can just do that by logging into their Final Works. Jim's been gracious enough to put his time in every Thursday, first Thursday of the month, to kind of come up with these classes that he teaches through his photography school. So these are kind of a taste of what you can do. And if you want to get really drill down on it at the end of it, we'll go ahead and Jim will tell you more information about his school. And as a thank you for those watching to the end, if you'll stay through the end, James will have a nice discount code for you guys for watching. So with that, I'm going to let Jim introduce himself and tell us a little bit about you and about your photography school.
Well, thank you, Melissa. I appreciate that. We're going to be talking about f-stops aperture today, but a little bit about Landers Photography School. I started teaching photography in 1997. I didn't call it a school then. It took probably another a decade before I really started calling it that. Because at first it was just little private classes here and there. There would be some photographer that said, I want to learn something. And then my first reaction was, I'm not good enough. But I bet everybody says that at first. But she convinced me. She actually figuratively grabbed me by the shoulders and said, you're crazy. You have a degree in photography. You've been doing this now for 6 years, and you can't tell me you don't know something more about photography than I know. So sit down and share it with me. And so that's effectively what's happened. I got my degree in 1991, a 4-year college degree in photography in 1991. And I just didn't have that confidence. I felt like I'm always looking at people who are better than me, and I want to be more like them. And I'm thinking, I don't know as much as those guys do. So if you want to learn something, you should go visit with those guys. But she convinced me otherwise. And I realized I actually do have something to share. And so at that point, that's when that happened, where I started writing classes. And the first class was just a photo basics class, a real simple class. I think it was 4 2-hour sessions, and it's I still have a photo basics class, but it's quite a bit different than it was from the beginning. My very first job in photography was before I got my degree. It was in 1983, but I was only part-time, very part-time at that point. And after my degree, I've only done photography since then. And so since 1991, I have been a full-time photographer. And for the last 11, 12 years, I've added the business side so that those who want to go on the business side can learn that as well. And I learned to like that part, learned to love that part, which was surprising to me because I enjoyed the photography, and the business side was just kind of, yeah, I know it's over there. And so it became something that over time I really learned to enjoy. So if you don't mind, real quick, Martin, can you tell me a little bit about what you enjoy photographing? And then I'm going to ask the same question of Julie.
I do a lot of outdoor photography. There's a couple of parks in the area, ponies. They're probably my favorite subject because every time I go up there, it's something different, something new, and the scenery is beautiful up there on top of it all. I currently also own and operate a gallery in West Jefferson, North Carolina, called Keslight Gallery. It's a photography-only gallery. We got about 16 different photographers in here, and we've been in business for now. This is about our 7th year now, and through it all, last year we kept the bills paid and the lights on. So
that's great.
That's what I'm doing right now. I'm retired, so. This is all just kind of like having fun time, really.
I love it. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with me, Martin. And Julie, tell me about what you enjoy.
I am a painter. So my photography is based around snapping, unfortunately, just snapping all of the beautiful things that I want to paint. Roses, flowers that I see, and then parts of scenery that will be amalgamated into a composition of a painting. And then, of course, my paintings so I can put them online. So that's what I do, which is
Awesome.
not, I mean, I use my iPhone.
Great. And there's a lot, I would assume there's a huge number of painters who do what you're talking about. I've come across a handful, but it just seems like it's pretty normal. Photograph the thing that you want to paint so that you don't have to be there forever, or it's just a convenience to get the angle you want and then match the colors and I mean the light changes throughout the day, so the scene, if you're sitting in it, is changing. If you've got a photograph, it's that moment. So yeah, that's great. Thanks, Julie. Let's see, pin. All right, I just pinned it, Melissa. I knew you had asked me to do that before, and I just realized I hadn't done it. So today we're going to be talking about blurring the background. Now that's just the title of this. We're going to be talking about the tool in the photography toolbox called aperture. And let me give you a real simple definition of what an aperture is. It's simple, real simple. And I know that a lot of other definitions of this particular word go into a whole lot more detail, but they shouldn't, because it's very simple. It's a hole that lets light in. That's all an aperture is, a hole that lets light in. Now, as photographers, we care about how much light is coming in because we don't want too much. It'll blow out the image. It'll be an overexposure. We don't want too little because we won't collect enough light. It'll be an underexposure. We want it to be just right, kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, getting the porridge just right. So aperture, a hole that lets light in. And that means any hole that lets light in. If you have a hole in the roof, that is an aperture if it's letting light in. Your eyes, aperture. Now, because we care as photographers how much, then we have a unit of measurement for that. And that unit of measurement is called an f stop. The F stands for focal, but I don't think anyone is ever going to say it completely out. I've never heard anyone say focal stop. But just in case you're curious, a bit of trivia, I suppose, F stop stands for focal stop. And each stop represents a doubling or halving of an amount of light. So it's not like inches on a ruler or centimeters or meters. It has nothing to do with that kind of measurement because that starts off with 0 and goes until the edge of that item that you're measuring. With light, it's whatever I have, but I can control that by doubling it or halving it if I need more light, if I need less light. Now, how do I know whether I need more or less? That's one area that everybody can just tell. When you look at a photograph that's just so bright, you say that it's too bright. When it's too dark, it didn't receive enough light. You know that it's too dark. So that's how you tell, by looking at it. And after a while, you kind of get used to it and you can kind of judge what the correct f-stop is, what the correct shutter speed, what the correct ISO is supposed to be. Just by being in an environment, you can tell what those light variables are supposed to be. There's 3 light variables that you have control over: ISO, shutter speeds, and the one we're talking about today, aperture. I'm going to share my screen real quick so you can see my handout. And at the same time, I'm going to share my handout with you. Actually, I have to do that before I share, don't I? All right. Oh, you just did that for me. Thank you, Melissa. Yay. She's on top of things. She always is. I love working with her. So here is the handout. Now, I don't know if you, she put it in the chat window, so you could download it if you want to. You could also look at it right here. The advantage of downloading it is you can have it for later if you want to look at it later. So blurring the background, it's being able to control the depth of focus as a side effect. And I want to make sure I make that point clear. There is an effect and a side effect for every single photography tool, every one of them, an effect and a side effect. Kind of like if you went to the doctor and they gave you a prescription, there's probably going to be an effect. Otherwise, why would they give it to you? But there's probably going to be a side effect. And some of those side effects are good. And some of those side effects, they wouldn't fit that same description. Photography tools are the same thing in that respect. Every tool in photography has an effect and a side effect. The effect of aperture is the amount of light. The side effect is depth of focus. Now, if you're going to read a photography book or hear it correctly, you're going to hear it stated as depth of field. Depth of field. And I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and so a field to me is where the bluebonnets grow, or maybe where the longhorns hang out. So it didn't really give me a good idea of what this particular tool does. Aperture, a hole that lets light in, measured in units called f-stops. Now, on your camera, we're going to be talking mostly today about using the aperture priority on your camera. If you've got a Canon or I believe Fuji, then I think it's AV that's on your camera. Maybe it's Canon and one other, but Canon definitely is AV. It stands for aperture value. And on Nikon, it's just an A. And I know it looks like A for auto, but it's not. It's A for aperture priority, meaning you are choosing that particular value. Now, there's one reason and one reason only to ever choose the A or the AV. One reason and one reason only to ever choose that particular tool on your mode dial. And that's because you want to control the depth of the focus. Now, when I say depth of focus, I mean something like this photograph of a Hershey's Kiss. I don't know about you, but I'm a chocoholic and I like to share. And so I do give away chocolate, but I can't do that when I'm doing a Zoom call. But if we were doing this in person, there'd be chocolate sitting right in front of you, quite possibly exactly what you're seeing here. Anybody else a chocoholic? Uh-huh. Love it. I've got some dark chocolate sitting right over there. I'm not going to have any right now though, because that if you're familiar with dark chocolate, if you eat it correctly, you've got to let it sit in your mouth and let it melt away. Otherwise, it tastes like plastic or something. It just doesn't. It's got no flavor. But oh, it's so good. Anyway, this photograph of that Hershey's Kiss, you can see very clearly, plain as day, that the Hershey's Kiss is totally in focus. But there's something in the background that's totally not in focus. Now, at first glance, I think a lot of people would call that bokeh or bokeh. It's the same thing. But what that is Japanese for blurry or fuzzy or out of focus. But it's called, again, like depth of field is the real way of saying it. Bokeh or bokeh has a real way of saying it too, and that's called circles of confusion. Circles of confusion. It's so out of focus that it takes on the shape of the light as it's passing through your lens. That circle, your lens. You want to know something really fun or cool? You can change the shape. It doesn't have to be a circle. You can make it a square, a triangle. You can make it the shape of that Hershey's Kiss. You can make it in the shape of a Christmas tree, whatever. By putting a cover in front of your lens that has the shape that you want cut out of it. If you photograph through that shape, your circles of confusion will be triangles of confusion or Christmas trees of confusion. So you can make those any shape you want. The way you do that is through two variables. One, choosing the correct f-stop, and two, moving your subject and you away from the background. So two variables, f-stop and distance, cause that to happen. Now, specifically on the f-stop side, it's a low numbered f-stop. We're going to go into that in just a moment. Again, I want you to remember it's in that gray box. There's only one reason to use this mode, and that's to control the depth of the focus. So if I'm thinking that's what I want that Hershey's Kiss to be in focus. And whatever that is in the background to be out of focus, I'm choosing aperture priority. Now I can do this in manual mode as well. In fact, I do it in manual mode, but when I'm teaching a basics class, I just make it as basic as I can. And so if you're curious what those circles of confusion are, I asked that in an in-person class. I ask everybody what they think that is. And a lot of people will say it looks like Christmas lights, like white Christmas lights. And it really does look like that. But it's more Hershey's Kisses. It's just the light coming from a window reflecting off of them. It's a whole bunch of Hershey's Kisses back there in the background. If you count all of them, that'll tell you how many Hershey's Kisses are back there, because each one of them represents one circle of confusion. Now, on all modern cameras, the ones that you can buy now, you control the f-stop on the camera itself. But I think it's important to know that this is not a function of the camera or on the camera. That's just where you control it. F-stops exist on the lens. And so if you buy another lens, you may have a different range of f-stops to choose from. I'm going to scroll down to the next page. The side effect: the larger the number, f-stop number, the larger the depth of the focus. And conversely, the smaller the number of the f-stop, the smaller the depth of focus. So thinking back to the photograph that was on that first page, because the depth of focus is just the one Hershey's Kiss, and the rest of them are totally out of focus, then this represents a small depth of focus. Therefore, a small f-stop number had to be used in order to create this. Now, I mentioned that there were two things. Also, it had to be a good distance, but you can't change distance as a mode on your camera. You have to physically do that part. And it's not a matter of zooming in and out. It's physical. You must move you and your subject away from the background, or move the background away in order to achieve that particular look. Same thing as you're seeing on this page, where you see this. This is a railing at a local country club, and this railing, you can see one of these is in focus. The first one's out of focus. The second one's in, and it gets further and further blurry, more out of focus. The further and further it goes away, the more distance there is. So this would also be an example of a small depth of focus. And again, to achieve that, you choose a small f-stop number. So the reason I'm not giving you exact numbers is because I don't know what lens you have on your camera right now. It's relative. Whatever lens you have on, if your goal is to create an image that looks like this, you must choose a small number, whatever you have available. If 3.5 is the smallest, if 5.6 is the smallest, then that's the smallest. Now, at 5.6, you're not going to create this image. You just can't. Not this particular one. But the one on the other page, if you get enough distance, then you can. You're going to need to move the subject and you at the camera much, much further away in order to achieve that with a 5.6. But it is still possible. Now, most ideally, you want a lens that has maybe a 1.8, a 1.4. That's the kind of lens that you would be after to create these kind of images quickly and easily. But you can still do them in many instances with lenses that don't go to those low of numbers. Now, when it comes to lenses, generally speaking, the lower the f-stop number, the greater the price tag. And you've probably recognized this. I'm probably preaching to the choir on this one. If you were to get a popular kit lens, meaning the lens that comes with the camera when you buy it, unless you upgrade it, a popular kit lens is an 18 to 55 millimeter on a lot of cameras. Not on all. There's a lot of different kit lenses, but one popular one is an 18 to 55. A very inexpensive lens. If you ever needed to buy one, which it came with the camera, so therefore most people will never need to buy that particular lens. But if you ever needed to buy one, you could find one for no more than 200 bucks. I'm sure you could find one for less than 200 bucks. But if you were to get the upgrade, the one that has the lower f-stop number, the 18 to 55 has a range of 3.5 to 5.6. And the base reason for that is because it zooms just like your lens does. When you're at the 18, the smaller focal length, you can have a wider opening. But as you zoom in, the barrel gets longer. So therefore, you're forced to have a smaller opening. You didn't choose it. Your camera just does it because it has to. The barrel's longer, so it doesn't let quite as much light in. Let me give an example of that. I want you to, in your mind, picture something that I'm sure everyone can picture in their mind. A toilet paper roll. Is anybody having trouble with that one? No. Toilet paper roll. That's one. The second thing I want you to imagine in your mind is a paper towel roll. These are basically the same thing, just one's longer than the other. If you were to hold up that toilet paper roll up to your eye and just look at the ambient light in your environment. Don't try to point it up at a light or anything. Just the room that you're in. Just point it at the room. The amount of light, and I want you to look at the amount of light that's being reflected on the sides of the barrel of it. Look at the amount of light on the side of it. So you're not really looking through, you're looking at its side. Look at the amount of light reflected off of the toilet paper roll versus the amount of light reflected off the side of the paper towel roll. Then you'll realize how much light you're blocking, because effectively it's like a zoom lens. When I go from that toilet paper roll down to the toilet paper roll down to the paper towel roll, I'm effectively a wide angle to a zoom. But I'm not just cropping things. I'm also cropping the light that existed in those areas. So therefore, it goes from that 3.5 as you zoom into the 55 to 5.6. That's just the nature of the lens. But you can pay to get rid of that problem, just like you can pay to get rid of a lot of problems. Oh, that reminds me of a story. Hope you guys like stories. I'm going to share this one with you. I think of stories all the time, but I don't always share them. All right, so my boys are both in their 20s. So one is in his senior year in college. He's about to graduate this semester, and the other one has already moved out and he's engaged to be married. So he's well on his way, doing his thing. But when they were little, one day I came home from work and they confronted me, and they seemed quite concerned. They said, "Dad, I don't know how to tell you this, but Mom's been watching this TV channel called LMN, and I don't know what that stands for, but what I know is that it's wives killing husbands in all of them, and I'm guessing that LMN probably means like what did they say? Like in Murder Network, Women's Murder Network. I don't remember. There was something along those lines, and so they were very concerned for me. And they shared their concern. Lifetime Movie Network. Oh gosh, I forgot that part of the story. I hate it when I forget a part of a story. But they had this concern. They were sharing this with me, and why did I bring that up? Man, I forget the name and then I forget the reason. That's what happens when you get up past your 50s, isn't it? So I'll think of it when it doesn't matter anymore. But there was a reason why I brought that up. Oh, because you can pay to get rid of a problem. That's what those shows were about, paying to get rid of your problem. That's why I brought it up. Yay. So the difference in price between that 18 to 55 millimeter lens, the one that is the 3.5-5.6, that's the range of the the largest opening. If you were to buy the upgrade to that takes you down to 2.8, and you could do 2.8 throughout. That means even if you were to go from 18 to 55, you could maintain that f2.8. The difference in price, though, I told you before that the 18 to 55 is $200. The 2.8 equivalent, it's a 17 to 55, but same thing. The equivalent is about $2,000. So we're adding a zero there. It's not quite that much, but still nearly that much. And I don't know about you, but I remember my math teacher saying that zero meant nothing. Huh. Zero means a whole lot of something in this instance. To go from 200 to 2000 just for an extra stop or two of light. Now, why would someone purchase that lens? Because of more light. Now, generally speaking, people aren't going to pay that much more for the lens. If they saw one that was $200, another was $2,000, they'd say that was crazy. They'd probably wonder why, but they would say, why is there such a difference in the price? I would. The reason for the difference in the price is because there is a whole lot more light coming in. Now, how much? Each one of the numbers you see listed at the top of the screen, the f-stops, 1.0, 1.2, 1.4, 1.8, each one of those represents a full stop, a full f-stop. Now, on your cameras, when you click and change your f-stop, each click is 1/3 of a stop. So that means 3 clicks, 1 stop, meaning doubling or halving, depending on which direction you're going, more or less light. So if I were to go from 4 to 5.6, I have 1 stop worth of difference. And now I'm going to ask you to think about this. I'm going to answer it. Is it more or less light? The answer is less. Now that may make you wonder, but it's a higher number. Higher number, more light, right? It looks that way. Except there's a problem. It's not a problem at all. It's just math. These are fractions. Effectively, these are fractions. So let's say it's 4. Let's say there's 4 people in a room and there's $1 million there and you get split it. Would you say, oh, 8 is bigger than 4? Let's go get 4 more people. No, because you'd rather keep your $250,000 than 125,000 because you don't want to split it because more is less for you. It's a fraction. So the higher the number, the less the light. And you see that right here. That's the effect. More light with these smaller numbers, less light with these larger numbers. So as you move one direction versus going the other direction, as you move from these higher numbers, if you go to a higher and higher and higher number, you're getting less and less and less light. As you go to, conversely, of course, as you go to these lower and lower numbers, you're getting more and more and more light. What that means is the opening gets bigger or it's getting smaller. As it gets smaller, you're going to larger and larger numbers. As it gets larger, you're going to smaller and smaller numbers. That's the effect. That side effect that we touched on. As you go to higher and higher numbers, it's not converse. It's exactly what you'd expect it to be. Yay, the side effect makes a lot of sense. The more depth of focus you want in a photograph, the higher that number you choose. If you want a small depth of focus, choose a smaller f-stop number. Now let's give an example of when you wouldn't want to blur the background. Let's say that you took a trip to San Antonio, Texas. For some people, when they think of San Antonio, Texas, they think of the Alamo. And I hope that's what they think of. But I assume you're going to want to photograph your family or your friends, whoever it is you're traveling with, in front of the Alamo. But there's one little problem. And that's there's a whole lot of other people around. And when you photograph your family or your friends in front of a landmark, do you really want all those other people around in your photograph? I'm going to come back to that. Think about that for a moment, because that's an aside, that's an extra. In this instance, I want the Alamo in focus, and I want my friends or family in focus. So therefore, because it's a good distance, you're going to be away from the Alamo. You could go walk right up to it, but then you wouldn't see the whole thing in it. And so you're going to back up so that you can see both your family and the Alamo in the background. It's not a huge building, it's a tiny building, but still you want to be able to see it. I say it's tiny. It's a lot smaller than what people think or expect. So you photograph them in front of it, you're going to have a distance. Let's say that this is the camera, this is the people you're photographing, and this represents, and so a linear line, the camera, the subject, the Alamo. So you've got a good distance between subject and background. Because I want both things to be in focus, that is a big depth of focus. Because I want that big depth of focus, I need to choose a bigger f-stop number in order to achieve it. Now, I teased a moment ago about the people who are in it. Do you know there's a way to make them disappear? Are we doing shutter speed mastery in the next one, Melissa? Oh, I think you're muted. Sorry. I think we're doing shutter speed mastery in the next one. Oh, now you're not muted. Okay. So this is a T, if it is the next one, I know it's coming up at some point. At some point we're doing shutter speed mastery, and I'm going to be talking about a bunch of different things, a bunch of fun stuff. But one of the things I'm going to be talking about is how to make the people disappear. You do not have to include them in your photograph. And I'm not talking about Photoshop. I'm not talking about photographing it now and painting it later either, because you could just not paint the other people in, right? Right? I'm sure Julie has had some experience with this in the past. But you can do this photographically. and I'm going to tease it, but I'm not going to give you the answer. Here's the tease. People are invisible. And I'll prove it if you watch the Shutter Speed Mastery class. So there's your tease for the day. Does that mean? Maybe. But hey, you're going to love it. People are fascinated by this if they weren't aware of it already. All right, so let's go over this real quick. You can choose to get the foreground in focus and the background out of focus. You can choose to get the background in focus and the foreground out of focus. You can choose to get everything in focus. This is what the side effect for f-stops gives you the power to do. So there's three variables here. One, and I mentioned two already, the depth of focus. The smaller the number, the smaller the depth of focus, the more shallow the depth of focus. Number two, the distance. You want to be far away from your background, but your camera and your subject close, if your goal is to blur the background. But there is a third variable here. I haven't mentioned this one yet. And you can see on the handout, it's the focal length. The focal length is just the number that you're zooming in on. Sometimes you're using a fixed focal length or a prime lens, and so it doesn't zoom. I guess you can say you have a manual zoom then, and that means you walk towards your subject or back away from your subject, but that's not what I'm talking about. Zoom is just a focal length that has the ability to be changed, so a variable focal length. And you see that when you're zooming in and out. And sometimes you look at those numbers and other times you don't pay attention at all because you don't necessarily need the numbers to know what the lens does, because you can just turn it and see what it does. But those numbers on there represent the distance between the optical center and the imaging plane, whether that's a digital image sensor or film, depending on what you use. But there's a place where the light comes into the lens and crosses. That point to the edge or to the image sensor is your focal length. That's where that number comes from. That's a real number that exists. So focal length. And you can see here, to maximize a shallow depth of focus, use a larger numbered focal length. So the wider the angle, the more difficult it is to get a shallow depth of focus. The longer, the higher that number, the easier it is to get a shallow depth of focus. Everything's relative though. So this brings us to something that you might not have expected in this class, and that is your focusing system. Because if your goal is to get one of these rails in focus, then you have to be able to choose in camera which one. Have you ever created a photograph of maybe two people and the focusing point went right in between them and got in focus whatever was in the background? You don't want that. You want to be able to control your focusing system. So it's interesting to know, and it's the first thing under a focusing system, that your focusing system doesn't work the same way that your eyes do. You have two eyes, most of us. So therefore we've got stereo. We can focus, we can tell distance. There's a lot of cool things we can do because we've got two eyes. But our lenses don't focus the same way. Our lenses work on contrast. And if there is no contrast, then there actually is no ability to focus, or it doesn't do it well. Now, focusing systems have gotten better. And so that is a blanket statement, probably isn't so much true anymore, but it still works off that principle of contrast. You've probably seen where a lens just kind of moved, and it just couldn't focus. Most of the time, that's because there isn't enough contrast at the focus point that you've chosen, or that it has chosen. Because you've got auto systems on your camera. You're aware of some of the auto systems on your camera. One is auto mode on your mode dial. So yeah, of course you're familiar with those, and you're also familiar with the focusing system, how it has auto focus, at least that part of it. But there are 5 auto systems on your camera, and 2 of those 5 are your focusing system. You've got autofocus, which you're already familiar with, but one you may not be familiar with, you may not think about. You probably are familiar with it, but you really probably don't think about it very much. It's the auto point of focus, meaning the camera effectively decides what to have in focus. Now, sometimes it does a really good job of that. In fact, a lot of times it does a really good job of that. If you've got one person in the center of your photograph, it's probably going to get it in focus nearly every time. If you have 2, it depends. Some cameras have face detection. Some have eye detection. Some have closest subject. Whatever the closest subject is, it focuses on that. Even if it's way over on the side, closest subject. But I would recommend that you actually turn that off and not allow your camera to ever choose your point of focus, except in, I can't think of one instance. Let's say you're at an event and there's a whole lot of people and you really can't put your eye up to your face. By the way, this time in this day and age, over the last year, we probably haven't been to a whole lot of events that fit that description. So maybe I'm talking about a thing of the past, but I expect it to be a thing of the future at some point. So that moment where you find yourself in this bigger environment and you can't put your eye up to the lens, you want to hold the camera up and photograph the group in front of you, the people in front of you, then I would allow my camera to choose my point of focus for me. I do want it to do it, and I do want my camera to do it in that instance, but it's only because I can't put my eye up to the lens, looking through the viewfinder. By the way, that's one downside to one of many downsides to a cell phone camera. There's not a viewfinder. You're just looking at the back of the screen. You're holding it out. And whenever you're holding something out, you have less stability. You effectively, when you have your camera looking through the viewfinder, holding it up to your eye, you effectively have a human tripod. You've got both your arms and your forehead. 3 places where it's touching. Very stable relative to being out here. And if you imagine, there are a lot of cameras where you don't have to use the viewfinder. 35 millimeter DSLR cameras, you can hold the camera out where it you're not using that. You're using the screen on the back of the camera. And by the way, that screen on the back of the camera, I give it a name different than what the manufacturers might call it. I call it confidence, because that's what it gives you. If someone's eyes are closed, you take it again. No problem. If it's out of focus and you can tell, you do it again. If there's something wrong with it, or for whatever reason, you can get a better composition, you do it again. So it increases your confidence. So I'm going to call it like it is. Much like people who are direct and tell you it like it is. Sometimes, not always, but most of the time, yeah. So I call it confidence because that's what it is. It gives people confidence. I think more people have shown an interest in photography since digital than pre-digital. And I think it's because of that screen on the back of the camera. Also has a little something to do with
about that, Jim, with like phones to, pro cameras. I get cell phones have come out with so much technology on it. It's like the stabilization mode that they have on the grid mode to kind of help you kind of do those things. With social media, we use those a lot because you're using a camera phone usually on the go because you're going to quickly upload that. But the only, I think James had pointed out to me, the one thing that cell phones hadn't done was the lens technology. Hadn't really gotten there. Are we able, I know now you see some Samsung coming out with the 21S that has, I think it's like 3 or 4 lenses on it. To do the focal, is that what it's doing? It's using all 3 lenses kind of, I'm thinking back to like when television first started and it would switch out the lens.
On those old cameras, yeah.
Yeah. Is that basically what they're doing now, is going back
basically,
to lens technology to pick which one that they're going to use to create the photo?
It is. Those are the difference between optical zoom and digital zoom, because you could have one lens do those things, but you'd have to do it through digital cropping. And anytime you crop, you reduce the quality of a photograph. So with those lenses, because they are of different focal lengths, you are not reducing the quality of the photograph. It remains the same, which is an important variable, especially with an image sensor that's tiny. The image sensor on a cell phone camera is really, really small. It's just no comparison. It's kind of like, let's say you have a pecan farm, and it's not pecan for those of you who say pecan, it's pecan. So, you have a pecan farm, and you have, let's say that Melissa has a 5-acre pecan farm. And let's say that Julie has a 500-acre pecan farm. If you took your top 50 bushels of pecans and compared the 5-acre place to the 500-acre place, which one will have the higher quality pecans? Yeah, the 500-acre one. It's kind of like if you follow, so Julie, you probably know this, but here in the States, we have football that isn't a round ball. It's a weird shaped egg thinking weird ball. That's football to us. We have different, in all the high schools, there are football teams. Would it be fair for a school that had a graduating class of 10 to compete their football team against the high school that has the graduating class of 1,000? That would be totally unfair. Why? Because you have your best based on what you have to choose from, which might be good in that smaller school, but it's no match for the big school. In other words, it'd be like a 1A school versus a 6A school, the smallest versus the largest. I don't know if you'd be familiar with that, Julie, but that's what it's called. So 1A versus a 6A. Totally inappropriate, totally bad form if those two were to ever get together and have a real game. It just doesn't work that way. This is cell phones versus DSLRs or larger. By the way, do you know that cameras come in small, medium, and large, just like fries at a fast food place? Small, medium, and large. Cell phone, what do you think it is? Small, medium, or large? Everybody knows that's a small. That's an easy one. Small. What about the full frame DSLR? Small, medium, or large? I'm kind of setting it up to be something more than it is. It's still small. It's the largest of the small category, but the full frame camera is still in the small category. There are medium format cameras and there are large format cameras. And large format cameras begin with an image sensor that's about this size. So what is that? 4 inches by 5 inches. So I don't know what that is in centimeters, but it's huge. So therefore it would be like the difference between a 5-acre pecan farm and a 500-acre pecan farm. It's just not apples to orange comparison. So they're all just tools though. Does that mean the 5-acre place is not a good place? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It has nothing to do with that. It just means it's just not in the same ballpark. It's the minors versus the majors. It's just not the same. They're different. So I'm not saying that a cell phone's a bad tool. It's an incredible tool. It just has a limitation. Just like all the tools when you go into a tool store. Here it's there's Lowe's and there's Home Depot. And if you go into one of those places, there are a lot of tools in there, but they're all good. They may not be all good for you. They may not be the ones that you want right now, but they're all good tools. Cell phone's a great tool. It's just a tool though. It's not something that can do everything. There's no one tool at the tool store that can do everything. Even multi-tools can't do everything. So that tool is made for smaller things. It's made for internet. It's a great tool. But if your goal is to print something to go on the wall, the quality level between a cell phone and a DSLR, and I'm saying all things equal, like they've got the correct exposure, there was no cropping, the DSLR is just going to blow it away. I mean, side-by-side comparison, It's someone who doesn't even know what they're looking for can see it. Now, the quality level keeps on getting better. And you may think that cell phones are going to catch up, but it doesn't work that way because DSLRs still are growing in technology also. And so both of them are getting better. So that's just a little FYI for comparison between a cell phone and a DSLR.
That's good because
In case you're curious.
you have to go with, but I think also having an understanding of the DSLR helps you with your photography on the cell phone. I know for me it has there's techniques like we're talking here in focal point, which you are able to kind of get a little bit of that with the
Oh, yeah.
grid on the
Mhm.
On your phone. And I have an artist that utilizes that pretty well for their social, where they have blurred the background of, say, Starbucks, but you know it's Starbucks because of the colors, the where it is, and has gotten social shares from that from Starbucks because she's in there sketching, which led to commissions, which led to her prints being sold because she got shares
Nice.
there. And
Good
she's
for
done
her.
nice, subtle things going into big businesses, and like a hamburger place where she's sketching. And it's a nice cross promotional that they're able to use. And the focus helps a lot because their artwork stays in focus. And again, it's nice, a nice social post. But it's great to have us. And it's great though, for this instance, when people are looking at taking their art and having quality print ones done on a DSLR, because you want to create the same effect maybe for a book if you're doing a collection of your art. I have a friend who has them out on displays on easels, and that is just a brilliant way of setting it up. It's a nice back. It looks like it's a garden, and there's their floral painting, and again, they're using the focus range that you have. You might have one of the flowers in focus in the front, the paintings in focus, and the back. You can kind of see it's this elaborate garden.
Nice.
So yeah, that's. But I think having these kind of basics of the thing help you translate that to your cell phone photos that you're using for art. So thank you.
Nice. Yeah, I agree with all that. Cool. So I don't know that I can tell you the how on the focusing system on a Zoom call. Um, some are easier than others to change it from, because the default is where everything is in focus on the focusing system on a camera. A Canon has on the right thumb, there are two buttons that are right up at the top edge. One looks like a star, and the other looks like it's like a plus sign made out of minus signs. So minus, 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 and a minus above and a minus below. And so you press that button, and that gives you access to the focusing system on a Canon. On a Nikon, it might be that simple, but you also might have to go through the menu in order to get to it, to change it from its default. So on different cameras, there's different solutions. So you could look up in the manual, or you could do a search online on how to change the focusing system so that you have control over it. So you can move it. There's points all over the place on the screen when you're looking through the viewfinder, and you can put them anywhere. And on some cameras, there's touch screens, so you can just touch the thing that you want to have in focus. Now, when you're photographing, let's say 2 people, and you want both of them in focus, but you want that background totally blurred, you have a potential problem here. And the reason is because they might be, and I'm going to do this from above. So let's say that this is one nose, this is the other nose, and they're pointing this direction. If they are equally distant from the camera, you're good. But if they are not equally distant, if you'you've chosen a very small f-stop number, then it's quite possible you could get one in focus and the other out of focus. When I'm photographing headshots, I like to get the eyes in focus, but I like for the ears to already be out of focus. That's just what I like. I think it looks good that way. to each his own. They may want everything in focus. If I have them turn just a little bit, it's quite possible that their eye and their ear are on the same plane. So therefore, that would make it them both in focus. It's also possible if you've got a macro lens to get just one eyelash in focus with a small f-stop number and a large focal length, a high numbered like 100, 200 on the focal length. It's possible to get one eyelash in focus. The ones closer out of focus, the ones further away out of focus. This is possible to do. Man, there's a lot of stuff you can do with your f-stop. What a cool tool it is. But you're choosing. I am in control. So therefore, I'm choosing these variables. Those who use their cameras in auto mode, it's the least creative mode available on a camera. And the more you learn about photography, you'll never use auto mode again. Okay, there's one exception. And you tell me whether I'm being silly or not. If Bigfoot runs across the highway, don't stop to think what the right shutter speed and f-stop are. Just put it in auto mode and press the darn button. Okay.
Yeah, because we're still waiting for that one sharp picture, and I have not yet seen anybody.
That's exactly. Thank you. See, that's my theory. There's only one reason why we haven't seen a good, sharp focus photograph is because these people were trying to figure out what the correct shutter speed was. That's the only reason. There can't be any other reason, could there?
No, not at all.
Oh, man. All right. So I have homework, should you choose to accept it.
Okay.
So I'm going to share my screen real quick so you can see it in addition to hearing it. Homework assignment. Choose 3 subjects. Put them at different distances if you have control, or choose subjects that are already at different distances. So this could be fence posts. They're already at different distances. You could use your dining room table and place 3 items on it. There's 4 parts to this. Number 1, choose an f-stop and distance that will get the first subject in focus, while the 2 that are further away are out of focus. So you're choosing a low number, a small numbered f-stop. You're focusing on the very first subject, the closest one, and put it purposefully close. Whatever the closest focusing distance is for a camera, for the lens you have on. By the way, that may be something you haven't really thought of before. You know, for your own eyes, you can get something too close and not be able to focus. Now, I'm not saying you can't tell what it is. I know that this is my hand in front of me, but I can't focus on it. If I have some reading material, and I put everything over, here we go. It's a name tag. If I have this name tag that close, I still know what it says because I know what the name tag says. But if this is the first time I'd ever seen it, I can't tell what it says. It's just not possible. I have to get it at a certain distance before I can see it. Where it used to be pretty close that I could focus. So people told me in my 30s that when I hit 40, that I'd probably be going to see an eye doctor at some point pretty soon after that. And I was like, my eyes are good. I'm not worried about that. Within 2 weeks of me turning 40, I was at an optometrist. Got glasses for the first time. I could not believe it. Now, that's been a number of years ago because I'm in my 50s now. But the focusing distance seems to be getting further and further away. I'm not sure. I think maybe my arms are getting shorter, but it just, you guys have heard that story before. Focus, closest focusing distance. Lenses have this too. So whatever the closest focusing distance is for that lens, by the way, they're printed on the lens. It's there. It's listed there. It says it on the lens. Now it's possible if there's a window in the lens, a plastic window, that it's in there. But a lot of lenses, the ones that don't have that plastic window, it's on the side. It just says the distance. And with that 18 to 55 kit lens that I mentioned earlier, I think that's 0.8. What is that? About 9 inches, whatever that is in centimeters. That's the closest focusing distance. So put it there. Put the first subject at the lens you're using, its closest focusing distance. And number 2, I want you to repeat this by focusing on the second item. You can imagine what number 3 is. Focus on the third item. So that means you must have control of your focusing system if you're going to do this homework assignment. The fourth one, I want you to choose an f-stop and maybe even distance. You might have to back up. That will get all 3 subjects in focus. So just rotate that all the way up to the highest f-stop number. And do what it takes to get all 3 in focus. If you can do those things, you'll have a pretty good handle on using f-stops to your advantage. How you feel about that?
Pretty good. I know I'm going to try some of these out with a Nikon I'm borrowing.
I like Nikon. I like them all though. They're all good.
I'm trying to see which one I like. I'm kind of like borrowing different people's cameras and seeing which one I used to shoot with a Canon Rebel when I shot 35 film. So I'm still trying to decide what I want for a nice a camera to shoot on there and to assist some of my friends who need their artwork shot for print. So yeah, so I'm just kind of playing around with it because I'll use it for diverse things. So it may end up being I need to get a couple of different cameras that I like. But if you know a good diversity camera, let me know.
Man, they are so all good now. I mean, there's still just tools that help you get what you want. But as far as general, man, even the inexpensive ones are really good now. It used to not be the case. It used to be, if it was under $1,000, stay away. Now you can get some of them under $500 that are still, the Canon M50, that's under M50 or 200. Darn it. It's either the 200 or the 50. It's tiny. It's lightweight. It's a mirrorless, but it's really good for general purpose. Now, if someone's saying, I want to do high-end museum quality portraits, then I'm certainly not going to recommend that. So it just depends on what it is you're accomplishing. You're trying to accomplish.
Well, if anybody does the homework, if you want to hashtag it and show it on social, hashtag, you can do P as in photo, T as in tips, M as in monthly, homework, photo tips monthly. So PTM homework. So just hashtag it, PTM homework. And you can also hashtag Landers photo. And we'd love to see what you guys accomplished with that homework assignment there. And with that, did you have some more, Jim, or can I let you kind of talk about how this can translate over to your photo school as far as when people want to learn a little more?
So a lot of times people want more than just that. I mean, it's what we went over is a surface level. It's a good piece of it. But in our classes, we do those things. It's one thing to have intellectual knowledge, to have an understanding that's just here in your mind. It's a totally different thing to actually do it yourself. Totally different thing. For instance, you know how surgery works, but I don't think I'm going to find you at Methodist Hospital this weekend. So doing it yourself plays a massive role. And in our classes, we do it in class, and it's assigned as homework, and it's critiqued at the beginning of the next class. That causes me to see if you've actually got it. And so what does it mean actually got it? I'm thrilled whether you got it right or bombed. It was horrible. You just thought you had it and you couldn't do it. I'm thrilled either way, because if you do it well, that tells me you've got it. You can do this. And if you're just doing it in the classroom where this is the only thing that's going on, I still consider that intellectual knowledge, a little bit of experience. But when you can do what we talk about on your own outside of me being around in your real world, I mean, when things are, when you're focused on this one subject, it's relatively easy to catch, to keep up and follow along. But once you aren't focused on this and your normal world just falls right back in, all the million things that you have to do, that you're responsible for, if you can do it in that environment, that tells me you've really got it. So I have seen many times where someone had no problem in class, but had problems once they started doing it on their own. This gives me the ability to see where the problems are. And in seeing where the problems are, I know what direction we need to go in order to fix it. And so that is a huge advantage of the regular classes, being able to put that together and do that. So the next class that I would recommend that's along these lines is our Photo 101. And it begins on Wednesday of next week at 9:30 in the morning, Central Standard Time. And it is mostly via Zoom, with one exception. When we do the shutter speed class, we actually go to a place called Bass Pro Shops. They have a waterfall, a man-made waterfall, but still pretty, on the side of their parking lot. And we just meet there. For those who have been too far away, or maybe their work schedule doesn't allow for it, or whatever variable, for those who weren't able to be at that, we have recorded it. Either someone comes along with me, sometimes my wife comes along with me, sometimes I just set a camera up on a tripod, but we record it, and so someone could watch that, either recorded or live. If I know someone wants to watch it live, then I'll set it up as a live. If they can't make it at all, then I'm just going to record it and they can see the recording later. I put it in all the recordings in a Dropbox folder, and then give the students the link to that so they can view it anytime. But that's the next one. But there's tons of them coming up on both the photography side and the business side. So that's a little bit of additional knowledge of what we do at Landers Photography School.
And additionally, you also have a photo enthusiast club here in San Antonio, where we're based out of. You want to give a little information about that? Because I have liked, going to the meetings. I think I found you through Meetup on there, and those have always been really, it's a lot of information almost on a monthly basis, but it's so much fun because, again, it's kind of like your homework assignments. We all have like the photo of the month.
Yeah. So that is our camera club's called Photo SA, Photo San Antonio. By the way, I did a search when I came up with the name, and the search thought I was talking about South Africa. So, and I don't think we have anyone from South Africa in the group, but we do have someone from Zimbabwe in the group. But Photo SA, Photo San Antonio, and it is we bring in speakers every single month. It's a once a month thing. It's on the second Thursday every single month. So that's 1 week from today. And it's at 6:30 Central Standard Time to 8 o'clock. And so we bring in a speaker, and it's a different speaker each and every time. And so you get a different point of view. They bring up their own subjects, whatever it is that they're passionate about, and they share for about an hour. And the one we had in the past few that we've had have been, one does video in addition to stills, and he's won a lot of awards. We've had one that the one that we had most recently did one on, it wasn't photography related. She is a photographer and she teaches photography even, but she was talking about different things that you can include in your life that make things run smoother for you. And she called them life hacks, or what did she, what it was hacks, but I can't remember what the first word was. It might've been life hacks. But for life hacks for photographers. But it was very general. Anyone could have gotten something from it, not just photographers. But that was her subject she brought up. The one that's coming up next is a high-end portrait artist. And Melissa and James know him. His name's Kevin, and he does high-end portraiture on a large format camera. He does it on the smallest of the large format cameras, a 4x5. I actually thought he did it on an 8x10, but 4x5, it's still huge. So what if I thought it was a little bit different? It's still impressive. And so he creates these images that are, his goal is a timeless museum quality piece. So the opposite of the snapshot, which of course most photographers aren't after a snapshot. But he's like the total opposite end as far as his goals. That's what he sets out to do, and that's what he does. And so he's going to share his thoughts, his methods, his philosophies, his troubles, and how he's fixed them and moved through, and how even though his price is more than anyone else in this area, he's still able to get lots of clients. Not an issue. And
Yeah.
when I say a lot, if you were to ask him to do a headshot session, museum quality, maybe a 20 by 30 print on canvas, he's probably going to quote you around $25,000. Whereas the average headshot in San Antonio is probably $500.
Yeah. But it's a different caliber.
It is.
And
Comparing apples to oranges for most.
yeah, I've used Kevin to photograph some art for me before. I love telling the story because when I have somebody with a 35 millimeter, if these are 4 feet by 5 feet, sometimes they're still going to shoot it to get the detail in sections and it has to be stitched. And Kevin's shot it in one shot so detailed that when I looked at it, I kept seeing little stray lines on it and I kept wondering what they were. Was when I zoomed in on it and I realized they were the brush hairs that were caught in the acrylic paint from the artist I was doing. And I could not see them too well, even on the original, but I knew they were there now. And so I had to go through and pick them out with the tweezers. And I was using the photo because it captured that much detail in the photo. So when we made these prints, you could go fairly big. I mean, you could do the 4 feet by 5 feet on there, and it's amazing. So yeah, the detail and the caliber are different, and it's just like with artists and pricing. You know, you price what you have done on your experience, the quality of the work, the materials, the time. So Kevin, listening to Kevin about pricing, and like I said, artists and photographers can benefit from listening to his lecture on pricing, because I take care of the pricing for my artists, because my artists, by the time if I leave them at the booth, they're selling it for $5 and it was $1,200. So I don't back down on my prices, and Kevin doesn't either, because he knows what he's worth. So that is going to be a really good photo essay meeting. I look forward to that. And I said, okay, we did mention what next month's thing is, but if you want to reiterate that one, you did have it right. It is the shutter speed. So if
Shutter speed mastery. Okay.
So talk what you're going to be talking about then.
Sure. For shutter speed mastery, I changed its name to Shutter Speed Mastery because the title that I wanted to give it didn't get much attention, but I call it controlling time. But this is such a foreign thought to humans, because for us, time is linear. It's just how we live our life. Time keeps on ticking into the future. There may be a Steve Matthews Band lyrics about those words, about that subject. But it's just how it works. It's just linear, just keeps on going. There's nothing we can do to make it go faster. There's nothing we can do to make it go slower, no matter how much we want. And so it just keeps on going. And for a human, shutter speed is 1/24th of a second. Didn't know you had a shutter speed, but you do. They don't have a shutter like you see in a camera, but you live life at 1/24th of a second. That's how we understand it. And that's how we think it is. But that's only how it is through one narrow perspective of a human. Our camera is not limited to that narrow perspective. You have a lot of shutter speed options available on a camera, and you can change the way things look as a result. You can stop the motion of anything with a fast enough shutter speed. And we know this. We don't really think of stopping time too much, but yeah, now that you say that, that makes sense. But we can also slow things down. And we've seen examples of this. It's not like it's foreign to us to see a waterfall, either the stopped motion where you see every single droplet of water, or the reverse where it's a long exposure and the water is so soft and flowy that it looks more like cotton or tulle than water. We're not confused by that. Our brains don't go, I wonder what that is on those rocks. We know that it's water, but we can't see that in our real life. We can only see that because of a photograph, because a camera is not limited to a human understanding of time. That's why it's able to do that. And so from that perspective, we can use this side effect of being able to control time really effectively. And in that, it's how I answer the question that I gave you as a tease earlier, when the question was a statement, in that tease earlier where I said, humans are invisible and I can prove it. That and a whole bunch of other things at the Photoshop, excuse me, not Photoshop, at the Shutter Speed Mastery class.
Well, we're going to look forward to that. That's going to be awesome. And I think it's also great, again, for artists, especially if y'all decide to go into getting cameras to do certain things, like what this is great for is hummingbirds with the wings and getting that stop action to it. Or if you're somebody who likes to paint that motion going with the, I like to say it almost like a blur filter of the waterfalls coming down. This will let you capture those kind of scenes that you want to translate into your paintings, especially if you're somebody who does hyperrealism paintings, and you might want to catch to the detail. Getting a camera to go ahead and do these kind of things and capture that is great, and then adding your spin on it in art. We're coming towards the end, so I wanted to thank you for doing this, and I can't wait to have you next month. And I'm going to let James, we actually, for everybody watching, have something special in a discount. And I want James to kind of talk a bit about some of the photo papers that we have too, so that if anybody's looking to start printing and start taking these homework assignments that you're doing, get them printed, we have some selection for that. James, you want to tell them about the discounts?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we had our first Tuesday meeting every first Tuesday of the month. And we had a very interesting topic. I want to thank Louis Cuellar with Clampett Paper. He's one of our vendors. He provides a lot of the fine art papers and the photo papers that we utilize, probably the majority of them, I believe. He's our main vendor for those. And he talked about the different paper properties. And that is that all of that available now on YouTube, or is that presentation on a post?
Yeah, that
Okay.
should be under our Tuesday playlist there.
If you want to learn about so get some really interesting facts about the various papers that we use in the fine art printing world and the photo printing world, he provides a lot of insight into that, from the materials that were used or that we use, the manufacturing process, optical brightening agents, which are what gives paper their brightness, and the kind of the pros and cons to that, and about archivalness of papers. So one of the things we did toward the end is we offered a discount code for all of our fine art papers. And it's a way for people to try different papers that we offer. And the discount code is, what was it again?
YT as in YouTube, Feb, FEB, and then 21 for the year 2021. So that's going to be YTFEB21.
Yeah, so that is good through, I believe, let me double check here, the 16th. Yeah, for any of our fine art papers. It's 30% off. Obviously, if you're doing a bulk discount, your bulk discount's going to be greater. So it wouldn't really be applicable, but it's a great opportunity to test some of the papers. And we do have a number of papers that are really kind of oriented. While artists could utilize these papers, and they do, and they get fantastic prints, these papers tend to be a little bit more oriented toward the fine art photographer. And those would be like our Hanimal Photo Rag, which is a cotton-based paper, matte surface with very deep blacks. And then our Entrada Rag as well, very similar to the Photo Rag, but that is has no optical brighteners, so it's going to be even more archival. And then we have our Satin Luster paper, which is a resin-coated paper, as was described in last Tuesday's meeting, which really is going to give images that pop because the ink's going to rest right on the surface of the paper. So for photographers, I recommend you check out those papers because those are really optimal for photography. We have one other paper that I'd probably also suggest if you really want something unique and special, and that's our Hanimeal Photo Rag Metallic. So all of those papers produce incredible photo prints. They're ideal for art prints as well, but photo prints are really going to stand out on any of those papers. And then we have something new coming up that I think a lot of portrait photographers will like, a lot of wedding photographers, and that is a linen textured fine art paper. And that will probably be, I'm guessing within the next 2 weeks, we should have that available. I'm pretty sure we should have that before this special runs out.
James, can you just talk a little bit about the difference between the metallic and the normal Hanimeal? Because the normal photo rag is what I normally use to have my prints on. And I saw the metallic and I wasn't sure about it. So I didn't know what to even think about how to use it.
Yeah, so I don't, so the photo rag metallic, the Hanimeals, well, and let me kind of back up here. We do have a metallic paper, which is a resin coated paper, but it's just smooth and has kind of a silvery kind of base, but that's different. The Hanimeal photo rag metallic, and I don't quite like the fact that they refer to it as a photo rag. I guess because it is the base is cotton, but then they apply almost like they call it, they don't say it's a Barita coating, but I believe it's a Barita coating on it to give it that kind of that silver like appearance. It's a coating that is applied to it, but the base is cotton. And it has a little bit of tooth to it, a little bit of texture, which most photographers don't want much texture to their paper. But I'll tell you what is, whereas the regular photo rag is a relatively smooth, has a relatively smooth matte surface. Photo rag metallic is going to have a little bit of a stippled texture. And what happens is the way light reflects off of that is it really kind of accents the image along with that metallic property, so that your image really kind of attains this almost iridescent appearance to it. And you can even accent that further if you put that behind a glazing or glass in a frame that's also reflective. Normally, as framers, we don't, we suggest, hey, for images, don't put it behind a non-glare glass for its for the best presentation. But actually, when you put that paper behind glass, it even is pronounced more. So I know you're in New Zealand, but so the cost of shipping is a little higher. But I really suggest you get one of our sample packs, and so you can kind of see how those papers compare. It comes with a $20 gift card. Like I said, you still have to pay for the shipping, and but I definitely, if you don't have a lab there in New Zealand that can provide you samples of that, I do suggest you take a look at that. You may find some of your artwork really stands out on that particular paper.
I would think that paintings of the ocean would.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for that very, very much. I really enjoy working with you guys. I've had a few of my prints painted and printed from you guys and sent out, and the people have liked them. So thank you.
Well, awesome. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
Jim, like I said, has been a customer for a long while with us at Fighterworks. Jim, what papers have you liked using, and for what kind of photography, from your portraits to your, you have several different types of photography. Is there a particular paper that you've liked gravitating to?
Uh, my favorite is this, the canvas, the what is it, the artist
The art,
canvas? What,
the artisan canvas, artisan
I
art.
think that's the one that when I'm ordering, I just go to the thing that I want, or I just tell James, I'll print this one. Yeah, that the canvas, it's beautiful. If I'm slightly soft on my focus, I can't even tell because how forgiving the paper is for some strange reason. I'm sure that James has a real good reason for it. I've been real happy, and the work that I create would generally be a family portrait, and it would generally be on someone's wall, and it would generally be a nice sized image, because that's my target market. So on the photography side, I specialize in emotional family portraits as home decor. And so the goal is to have the photograph on their wall, and it's either the thick mount where it's not in a frame at all. It just wraps around the sides, or or maybe it's a thinner mount, but it's in a frame. But the goal is to have it displayed. I want my clients to cry tears of joy when they see those photographs every single day. I don't want it to be something that sits on someone's hard drive and they forget where it is and eventually accidentally delete it at some point. And so I'm very much for printing. I think most photographers are coming back around to that, because prior to 20 years ago, everybody printed. That was the norm. And because of digital, not everybody's doing that. It kind of went away from it. So from that photographer's point of view, we're heading back that direction. And I think that's great. And with labs like Finer Works, we have a tool to help us get that goal and make us where we're very proud to share our work with our clients. So now as far as the paper, there is it's a cotton that I really like, and I don't remember exactly what it is. I bet James knows which one I ordered.
Yeah, I believe it's the photo rag. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's so soft, and it's and I don't ever put my stuff behind glass or non-glare. I just have it. But I do tell them I guarantee the work. If anything happens to it, let me know and I'll take care of it. So far, that's never happened, but it could. And I also have a fade guarantee. If you feel like this is faded, you let me know and I'm going to reprint it for you. So I just tell them things like that, because I think that's what I would be concerned about if it was on my wall, because I have had photographs fade, and it's but not lately, not in a long time. I think that canvas that you're printing, that you're doing for me now, just I don't know if I might be able to put it outside and it's not going to fade. It's so good. So I'm sure that's an exaggeration.
Probably might keep it inside. Well, one of the things that I tell photographers, and I'm sure Jim would concur with this, is that if you're a photographer and you're watching this, and this goes the same with artists, if you want your work to sell, okay, think in the format of, does someone want to hang this on their wall? Because if you're producing imagery that people do not want to hang on their wall, it's going to be harder to sell your prints. So be conscientious of that, is when you're producing your artwork, and not necessarily change your style or change, what you paint, but maybe change the presentation, put it in a frame, put it on canvas like Jim does. But the idea is if you're in a position where you are wanting to sell your prints, make them into something that people want to hang on the wall.
Great. I want to thank everybody though for participating, Jim, for just kind of adding to our knowledge of photography. And again, I just want to reiterate that code that we have, which is YTFEB 621. That's 30% off on our fine art papers. And it's good through February 16th. And we'll probably go ahead and do some more codes like that during some of our next videos that we'll have on the first of the month. We have first Tuesday and first Thursday. So we hope to have all of you guys back here. We want to thank everybody who's been watching on YouTube, and Julie, John, Jeffrey, all of y'all for joining us on Zoom. Want to thank you guys, especially Julie, who's all the way in New Zealand. So thank you so much for doing that. We're glad the time was a good time to help our friends who are on the other side of the globe. So again, thanks a lot for participating in this, and we're going to keep doing these every month. We just want to add something, some education for you guys to help you guys to select a media and have confidence in the media that you purchase from us, and give y'all tips just to enhance, give you guys more tools in your toolbox. So with that, James, did you have anything else that you want to say, or
No,
Jen?
I think that pretty much covers anything that I had for today. I don't know if Jim wants to add anything else.
Jim, are you good?
There's always more stuff to say, but I'm just thrilled to be able to share, and that there are minds that are happy to take it in and listen and consider it, and maybe even take a step into doing the homework. I think that's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing somebody do a hashtag PTM homework.
Yeah.
And be able to see that photograph. I'd love to be able to see that photograph. So thank you for enabling that, Melissa. I appreciate you doing that. Yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest, and I look forward to the next time.
Great.
All right, Jim, you're host, so you can go ahead and end our meeting for us, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.